Hi everyone. In today's episode, we'll explore the rich, enduring influence and impact of ancient India on the world. Today, the USA leads globally in economics, military power, and culture, influencing people across the world to Americanize themselves. We've all seen examples of this, right? Don't call me Samir, call me Sam. And Sam's accent will get a software update if he visits the American embassy. We've all seen these examples. But imagine a time when India held that same type of global influence, when India's innovations, culture, and economy transformed the world. Authors like William Dalrymple in How India Transformed the World and Sanjeev Sanyal in Ocean of Churn have illuminated this fascinating story. Let's dive in. We'll explore many different ways in which ancient India influenced the pre-modern world, some well-known, some not so much. Let's start with Indian innovations in metallurgy and weapons design. You didn't think we had innovations there, right? Find out as we go along. The use of metals and their production has been one of the most ancient of sciences in India. It was closely linked to developments in chemistry as well. Acharya Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, has also mentioned this in his works, the considerable progress made in the arena of the metal industry. The Bruhat Samhita also talks about our advanced metallurgical skills and how gold was tested, melted, heated in the fire and then hammered for testing its purity. Did you know that the famous Damascus steel swords used by Arab warriors, they were influenced by the wood's production techniques from India? According to historical accounts, this steel was so prized that it was exported to places like Persia, where it was transformed into these legendary swords. The sharpness and resilience of these swords became synonymous with India's craftsmanship, which played a crucial role not only in warfare but also in establishing India's global reputation as a center of innovation in metalwork. William Dalrymple notes how this advanced knowledge in metallurgy spread across empires, fundamentally altering weapon design and military strategy worldwide. Even the Arab scholar Al-Idrisi, in his 12th century work Al-Hadid Al-Hindi, praised Indian craftsmanship, particularly for their skill in producing high-quality iron. He stated that the Hindus excel in the manufacture of iron. They also have workshops wherein are forged the most famous sabers in the world. It is impossible to find anything to surpass the edge that you get from Indian steel. And Indian steel gave you an edge as well. Okay, sorry, bad joke once again, but I can't help myself. Now, let's sail across the Indian Ocean, where India's maritime prowess changed the course of history. Ancient Indian sailors mastered the monsoon winds, navigating vast distances across the Indian Ocean to trade with Africa, Southeast Asia, and beyond. There's an ancient shipwreck near the Maldives believed to be an Indian merchant vessel carrying spices and textiles. This ship's discovery underscores the extensive maritime networks that flourished centuries ago. Indian ships were even built with a unique stitched technique. You heard that right? Stitched technique that's being revived today by the Indian Navy, with plans to sail an ancient style ship all the way from India to Oman, retracing those old trade routes. According to Sanjeev Sanyal in Ocean of Churn, the Indian Ocean was not merely a body of water, but a thriving economic and cultural corridor. By the way, fun fact, Sanjeev Sanyal, the economist and scholar himself, is going to travel on that stitched Indian ship, by the way. Anyway, Indian culture and religions, such as our stories, our social practices, our rituals, and also Hinduism and Buddhism, accompanied trade and maritime routes, influencing societies across the Indian Ocean rim. The architectural marvels of ancient Indian-style temples in distant lands and the adoption of Indian scripts and art forms by foreign societies serve as tangible reminders of this cultural exchange. Historical records show that India played a major role in the global spice trade, with spices making up a significant part of the country's exports, of Indian exports. The super busy maritime route that was driven by this trade connected India to the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. Spices such as pepper, cinnamon, and cardamom were in high demand there. So, not only did India drive the world shipping routes, we also made the food of other countries a lot tastier. Besides this, we were also able to transfer technological expertise and artisanal skills. Indian textiles, including exquisite cotton and silk weaves, were esteemed commodities in international marketplaces, according to K.N. Chaudhary. The complex weaving skills and vivid dyeing procedures of Indian textiles impacted fashion trends in far off regions, creating a lasting influence on worldwide textile traditions. Today, the Paris Fashion, I think was the Paris Fashion Week, where I'm sure you guys must have seen it on Instagram. I didn't really follow it much, but I've been told about it. The Paris Fashion Week influences fashion trends worldwide. Well, there was a time when Indian fashion trends impacted the fashion trends worldwide. Now we'll swim from the oceans to education. Sorry, like I'm a fount of bad jokes today. Okay, so we'll go from the oceans to education, specifically ancient universities like Takshashila, Nalanda, Vallabhi, Vikramshila, among others. Ancient India had a large number of universities spread across different regions. The oldest known university is Takshashila, dating back to the 6th century BCE. That's over 2600 years ago, though it might have been even older. Some other notable universities include Nalanda, Vikramshila and Odantapuri in Bihar, Vallabhi in Gujarat, Pushpagiri and Ratnagiri in Odisha, Sharda Peeth in Kashmir, today I think it's in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh, Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu and several in Bangladesh such as Somapura or Jagdala. This list is not complete and new archaeological discoveries continue to be made near these ancient sites. They weren't just places where Indian scholars thrived. Students from across Asia, China, Korea, Tibet and Japan flocked here to learn. Takshashila in the northwest of the Indian subcontinent, often regarded as one of the earliest known universities in the world or perhaps the oldest university in the world, with its roots tracing back to the 6th century BCE or possibly even earlier. Traditionally, it is believed that the Mahabharata was first told at Takshashila by Vaishampayana, a student of Vedvyas himself. Takshashila significantly influenced world culture and the Sanskrit language. It is linked to Acharya Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, who is believed to have composed his renowned work, the Arthashastra, at Takshashila. The esteemed physician, the famous physician Charak, a pivotal figure in Ayurveda, studied and later taught at this very university. Jivaka, another prominent physician and surgeon, is also said to have studied at Takshashila according to Pali texts. Additionally, the ancient grammarian Panini, who codified the rules of classical Sanskrit, was among the institution's alumni. Clearly, Takshashila produced some formidable scholars, or maybe the greatest alumni list ever. Adding to the list of greats, how can we not mention Nalanda, the greatest center of learning in the world at its peak? Zhuangzang, I hope I've got the pronunciation right, Huangzhang, a renowned Chinese monk, traveled to Nalanda in the 7th century Common Era, that's around 1300-1400 years ago, to study Buddhism and bring back texts to China. His journey, chronicled in his work, The Great Tang Records on the Western Regions, emphasizes how Nalanda was not just a hub for Indian students, but a pivotal point of learning for the entire Asian continent. According to Huangzhang's accounts, Nalanda's admissions examination was extremely difficult. Only around 20% of students who applied were accepted. Foreign students had the most difficulty passing the admissions test unless they were deeply versed in old and modern learning. Nonetheless, the Nalanda University had as many as 8,500 students and 1,500 faculty. This is a massive university even by today's standards. Imagine how big it was in its time. For those of you who may have played or heard of the latest video game Black Myth Wukong, I'm sure many of you would have played this. This action video game is inspired by the classic 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. The novel itself is loosely based on the actual 7th century pilgrimage of the Buddhist monk Huanzhang to India in search of this sacred text, of many sacred texts. Think about it. If you're journeying to the west from China, what nation is to the west? What is the greatest nation to the west at that time? Then there was another great center of learning, the Vallabhi University, which had been founded by women, showing women were also torch bearers in this sphere. All this goes to show that our centers of education were no less than the Oxfords and Harvards of today, and probably as difficult to get into, if not more. Bhaskara II, also known as Bhaskaracharya, maintained the tradition of Brahmagupta as the head of the astronomical observatory in Ujjaini University. He wrote the renowned Siddhanta Shiromani and Lilavati. Lilavati is a great ancient text to learn maths, by the way, and Bhaskaracharya had named that text Lilavati after his daughter because he was distraught that his daughter did not like mathematics, which is obviously the greatest subject in the world. I graduated in mathematics also, by the way, and he was distraught that his daughter did not like mathematics, so he wrote this text, apparently specifically for her, though that she would enjoy mathematics, and he named it in her honor. Her name was Lilavati, so he named the text also Lilavati. Bhaskaracharya was credited with being the first mathematician to adopt the decimal number system extensively and consistently. Now, let's turn to a tradition that is close to our hearts, or at least very close to my heart. For sure, something that I live and breathe on: storytelling. One of the most powerful ways India has shared its wisdom with the world is through stories. The epics Ramayana and the Mahabharata are perhaps the most far-reaching examples of this influence. These stories were more than just entertainment. They were spiritual guides, moral compasses, and political allegories passed down through generations, adapted by different cultures and retold in countless forms across the world. In Southeast Asia, particularly in countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata have become foundational narratives. In Thailand, the Ramkeen, their version of the Ramayana, is deeply embedded in the cultural consciousness. It's not just a story, it's a national treasure. The walls of Bangkok's Grand Palace are adorned with murals and paintings depicting the Ramkeen, illustrating how these epics are still celebrated in public spaces. The Angkor Wat temple complex in Cambodia was originally built as a Hindu temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu. Its walls are covered with carvings depicting scenes from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. The most notable is the churning of the ocean of milk scene, which is central to Hindu mythology. In Indonesia, Borobudur, the world's largest Buddhist temple, features panels that depict stories from the Jataka tales, Indian origin stories about the previous lives of Gautam Buddha. These are not just religious structures, they are cultural beacons that represent the flow of the Indian narrative and traditions into global spaces. Such was our influence across the world. But India's storytelling tradition didn't just travel east, it moved west as well. Some believe the famous tales of 1001 Nights, also known as Arabian Nights, you know Arabian Nights, right? The Aladdin and those 40 Thieves and Sinbad, the sailor. So the stories of the Arabian Nights owe some of their origins to India. Stories like the Three Apples and others have their roots in ancient Indian fables, particularly the Panchatantra, a collection of moral tales written in Sanskrit around 200 BCE, that's around 2200 years ago. This may not be widely acknowledged in the modern world, but Indian literary influence not only shaped Middle Eastern storytelling, but also traveled further to Europe, where many of these tales became known in Western literature. Theodor Benfey, a 19th century German expert in Sanskrit and other languages, believed that many of the fairy tales from Western cultures actually came from old Indian stories. One example is the Latin story Metamorphosis or The Golden Ass by Apuleius. I hope I pronounced that right. One of the few ancient Latin books that still exists completely. This story was inspired by a Sanskrit tale called The Story of Vikram's Birth, which is part of a collection of 32 stories about the adventures of King Vikramaditya. Similarly, Vishnu Sharma's Panchatantra has also spread widely across the world from Asia to Europe. Even Professor Johannes Hertel, a German scholar, in his Das Panchatantra estimated that there are over 200 variations of the book, with more than 75% in languages other than Indian languages. Last but certainly not the least, the economic impact of India on the global stage. We've already released 2 episodes on the Indian economy where we talk about the world when India contributed 1/3 of the global GDP. We're going to leave those links in the description below. Do check it out. This impacted trade too. A fascinating example comes from Berenike, a port on Egypt's Red Sea coast. Here, archaeologists found evidence of an active Indian community trading with the Roman Empire. Temples dedicated to Lord Ganesh and Gautam Buddha have been unearthed here, along with pottery and coins inscribed in the Brahmi script. For those who don't know, the Brahmi script is one of our most ancient Indian scripts. I think only the Indus script is perhaps more ancient than this. And some of my books, by the way, I use the Brahmi script as hidden clues. Check that out. Now, imagine an ancient marketplace bustling with traders from India, mingling with Egyptian and Roman merchants. They weren't just selling goods like spices and textiles, Indian merchants in Berenike. They were also exporting Indian culture and spirituality. This vibrant exchange of ideas and beliefs shaped not only local communities, but also the broader ancient world. Such instances reflect how deeply interconnected India was with different regions like the Mediterranean, not just through commerce, but also through cultural seeds that it planted. But despite these remarkable achievements, India's global influence started declining following invasions by the Turks and then the British. The once thriving centers of culture, economy, and innovation faced severe setbacks that saw its impact diminish on the world scene. And that's the one thing for us Indians in the modern day to always remember. Your innovative spirit, your cultural impact, your economic footprint, all of this will collapse rapidly if your nation is not able to do the one thing that every nation must do to survive: defend your borders. But as with any great civilization, resurgence is always possible, and listening to the pulse of today's self-reliant India, we see the signs everywhere. Whether it's in the tech industry, where Indian entrepreneurs are at the forefront of innovation, or through the global popularity of Indian culture, food, and fashion, India's influence is growing once again. So, that's it from me. I'm going to be playing chess with my son this evening. He tends to beat me very easily now, sadly, but as has been said very beautifully, a man never really loses to his son. He only sees a better version of himself. But did you know that the roots of chess are also in India? So, as we reflect on India's global influence, both ancient and modern, what other ways do you think India has shaped the world? Leave your thoughts and comments below. So this was the Immortal India podcast with me, Amish. If you enjoyed this episode, like and share it, please. And if you want to receive the notification for the next episode, click subscribe, please. Thank you.
This podcast is supported by the Dilip Piramal Foundation. The Dilip Piramal Foundation is an initiative by renowned industrialist Dilip Piramal to support dharmic causes across India and the world. In this aim, The foundation has supported art galleries, documentaries, dharamshalas, education, and many other such initiatives.